If you have already watched this introductory information, you can skip ahead no more than 9 minutes. Hello, welcome. I am predicting that famous singer-songwriter Paul Simon of Simon & Garfunkel will die on August 12th, 2025. This time-stamped email proves that this prediction that Paul Simon will die on August 1st, 2025 has been known since November 9th. We can see here the timestamp November 9th, 2024. On November 8th, 2024, we received the relevant prophetic signs related to Paul Simon. And as I wrote right here, God was pointing to November 8th ahead of time because Simon's death will point to Revelation chapter 8, verse 1. And this is the reason why Paul Simon will die on August 1st, 2025. In short, the date 8:1 and 11:8 hint at Revelation 8:1 in the Bible, which describes a period of silence that was observed in heaven. Paul Simon's first hit was Sound of Silence. As I wrote right here, it is exactly 38 weeks between November 8th and August 1st, 2025, and Paul Simon is predicted to die at the age of 83, for which 38 weeks hints at. All right, the analysis that God was pointing to August 1st was 100% correct. However, Paul Simon did not die on August 1st. Instead, God provided clear and relevant signs related to Paul Simon, which revealed adding 11 more days, including the sale of the storied mansion in Los Angeles for $110 million. 110 hints at the number 11, and Paul Simon is associated with mansion symbolism in God's signs, primarily because, for example, his biggest solo album is Graceland, and the song Graceland is about him traveling to Elvis Presley's mansion. 11 days after August 1st, which was again known since November of 2024, will be August 12th, the date it is predicted now that Paul Simon will die. And so, in other words, if you are reasonable, it is clear that essentially I predicted Paul Simon's death back on November 9th, 2024. Yes, it wasn't August 1st, but like I just said or explained, and it'll be explained much more in detail in other videos, 11 days was revealed through the prophetic signs on August 1st, which gets us to August 12th. And so in other words, again, back in November 9th, 2024, I predicted that Paul Simon would die on August 12th. If you have the eyes to see that. It's really quite simple and clear. I predicted August 1st, but again, it revealed 11 days to August 12th, and so essentially, back on November 9th, I predicted that Paul Simon would die on August 12th. A dirty bomb is a conventional explosive that uses radioactive material. I am predicting that 3 dirty bombs will explode in New York City, in Times Square, Penn Station, and Grand Central Station. There will then be a massive evacuation from Manhattan Island. I am predicting that these 3 dirty bombs will explode on either August 30th or September 4th. I am also predicting that a dirty bomb will explode in the port of Los Angeles on September 4th. I am predicting that Tehran, Iran, will be nuked by the US or possibly Israel on September 7th, 2025. This will obviously be in response to the dirty bombs that are predicted to explode in New York City. I am predicting that Kamala Harris and Gavin Newsom will die in a plane crash in St. Louis as they are traveling from Washington, D.C. to Los Angeles in Busch Stadium in St. Louis on August 2nd, 2028. This will be during the predicted presidential campaign of Gavin Newsom. As a result of Gavin Newsom's death, Michelle Obama will become the Democrat Party's presidential nomination. Michelle Obama will, quote unquote, win the election over J.D. Vance on November 7th, 2028, and will become the president on January 20th, 2029. Donald Trump is predicted to run as J.D. Vance's vice president. This scheme to overcome the 22nd Amendment will backfire and inspire Michelle Obama and Barack Obama to run on the ticket, with Barack Obama as Michelle Obama's vice president. She will then step down and Barack Obama will become the president again. It is predicted that there will be a massive Mary apparition on the beach in Rio, Brazil on April 24th, 2029. It is now recognized that there will be 2 massive Mary apparitions on the beach in Rio. The first of the 2 is predicted to be on March 22nd, 2029. These predicted Mary apparitions will not be secretive. They will be mainstream, worldwide news. Like all Mary apparitions in history, including at Lourdes, Guadalupe, and Fatima, this Mary apparition will be a demon pretending to be Mary. It is predicted that on April 26th, 2029, the key will open the bottomless pit and fallen angels will cross over into the earthly realm. April 26th, 2029 will be a symbolic beginning to the 5th trumpet judgment that is described in Revelation chapter 9, when the demonic realm collides with the earthly realm. April 26th, 2029 will be a symbolic beginning to demons pretending to be aliens. The demons pretending to be aliens will claim to be here to help us with our nuclear weapons. It is predicted that Pope Francis will be resurrected from the grave on April 26th, 2029. And it is possible that on this day, Pope Francis will announce that aliens have arrived and have made him the ambassador for the world. This will immediately give Pope Francis, the Antichrist, supreme power over governments of the world. April 26th, 2029 will be a symbolic beginning to a zombie pandemic and the masses becoming demonically possessed that will be facilitated through the thing, which is the mark of the Antichrist, and 5G frequencies. April 26th, 2029 will be a symbolic beginning to the coming genocide politicide in America. The resurrection rapture event will occur on Pentecost on May 27th, 2029. On September 11th, 2029, there will be a catastrophic asteroid hit of Earth in the Indian Ocean. The greatest seismic effect of this will be felt on the other side of the globe, which is North America, and this will trigger an eruption of Yellowstone volcano and will cause the volcano in the Canary Islands to collapse into the Atlantic Ocean and send a mega tsunami towards the East Coast. It will also trigger the collapse of the Hoover Dam, which will cause a water panic in California, and many other devastating earthquakes. The day of the Lord, the second coming of Lord Jesus Christ, Judgment Day, will be at the end of 2031. The date that this video is posted proves that these predictions are being made ahead of time, as do these time-stamped emails and forensic notes PDF documents. If you are skeptical for some reason, please email me and I will forward these to you. Genesis 7:11 describes the beginning of the flood judgment. Simon is associated with the number 4 through door symbolism. August 12, 2025 will be 7 months and 11 days after rainstorms, which is flood symbolism, in the first hours of 2025, on January 1st, 2025, New Year's Day, in which 4 of the nation's iconic locations were struck by lightning. Okay, the Washington Monument, the Capitol Building, the Empire State Building, and the One World Tower. There were also 2 locations in New York City and 2 locations in Washington, D.C. that were targeted by terrorists on 9/11 for a total of 4 locations, 4 iconic locations, just like the lightning on this New Year's Day 2025. Now, if I haven't explained yet in this video, the reason why Simon is associated with the number 4 is through door symbolism, and that's because the 4th letter of the Hebrew alphabet, and Simon is Jewish, is the symbol for a door. The word for that letter is dalat, and the 4th letter in the Greek alphabet is derived from that. That word is delta, and the word door is derived from the word delta. Okay, and so it all goes back to the 4th letter of the Hebrew alphabet, the word door. And so that's why God is using this number 4 in association with door, which is associated with Simon because of one of the trumpet judgments after the sound of silence in heaven, involving the door that is opened with the key to the bottomless pit, from which demons will emerge and cross the bridge over into the earthly realm. Bridge over troubled water, Simon's song. Also, the word key is equal to 41 in English, simple English gematria, and Simon was born in 1941. He was born on the 13th day of the month in 41, and 41 is the 13th prime number. And that's just one reason for why the number 13 is also but that's another story. We just want to establish the number 4 here. Okay, so that's one way in which, or why, the number 4 is associated with Paul Simon. Again, Paul Simon's death will hint at the sound of silence that occurred in heaven that is then followed by the trumpet judgments. And one of the trumpet judgments includes the opening of the door with a key to the bottomless pit. And then the demons crossing the bridge over in between the demonic realm and earthly realms. So, but also, a very big, important reason why God is associated in his signs, Paul Simon, with the number 4, is Revelation 8, not only Revelation 8:1, and therefore the trumpet judgment with the opening of the door, but also Amos 8:1, which is why famous Amos, the founder of famous Amos cookies, Wally Amos, died at the age of 88 on the 9th of Av, and making it prophetic. Wally Amos was the agent that first signed Simon and Garfunkel, and he lured them into his office with cookies, and then he went on to found famous Amos cookies. So it's not a coincidence. I mean, God made this man create or found famous Amos cookies after he signed Simon and Garfunkel through cookies, in order to point to the prophetic significance of Wally Amos, in order to point to the book of Amos. And specifically the 8th chapter here, which is why he died at the age of 88. And again, Paul Simon's death is pointing to, or will point to, Revelation 8:1 and the period of sound of silence in heaven. And Amos 8:1 describes a basket of summer fruit. Now, the prophetic signs we received on August 1st were in line with the season of a basket of summer fruit. Likewise, Paul Simon's predicted death on August 12th is during the time of year when there are baskets of summer fruit. And in other words, God used the death of Wally Amos at the age of 88 to confirm that Paul Simon would die during the 8th month of the year of August, in which there are baskets of summer fruit. But also, God used all of this to point to the first chapter of the book of Amos. The first chapter of the book of Amos has 15 verses. And that's why Paul Simon's prophetic dream occurred on the 15th day of the first month, 1/15. January 15th, 2019 was the day that Paul Simon had his prophetic dream, in which he was instructed to make the album 7 Psalms and to name it 7 Psalms. And we know this because when journalists visit him and interview him at his studio, he shows them the framed piece of paper on the wall that he wrote on after having the dream. and it has a date. So it's well known that his dream occurred on this specific date. But the reason why is because God is pointing through this date 115 to the first chapter of Amos, which has 15 verses. Now, proof of this is the fact that the album Seven Psalms was released exactly 115 weeks before the prophetic signs on August 1st, which, as I have explained, revealed adding 11 days to reach the predicted death of Paul Simon. So that 115 weeks was astounding, which was one reason why I was basically 100% sure that Paul Simon would die on August 1st. But then again, I shouldn't have been, because I know how God signs works, and he often uses steps. And it does make complete sense that he would use August 1st as a step if he didn't actually want Paul Simon to die. If he had another design for the date of Paul Simon's death, he would still use August 1st because of it pointing to Revelation 8:1 and the period of silence that was observed in heaven, the sound of silence. So anyway, that sound of silence sign date, if you will, with the prophetic signs that I've mentioned prior in this video and other videos, was exactly 115 weeks after the release of the Seven Psalms album, which was inspired in a dream on the date 115, because it points to the first chapter of the book of Amos, which has 15 verses. Now, why is God doing this? Because in those 15 verses of the first chapter is repeated a Hebrew idiom, and Paul Simon is Jewish, which is for 3 transgressions and for 4. Okay, quote, for 3 transgressions and for 4, unquote, is an idiom in Hebrew that is repeated multiple times in this chapter. This idiom means the tolerable limit of transgressions has been exceeded, and now judgment is unavoidable. Paul Simon's death will point to that, because it will point to the sound of silence in heaven that's followed by the 7 trumpet judgments. Hence why the Seven Psalms album, for example, and it being inspired on the date 115, because it points to this idiom for 3 transgressions and for 4. Basically, in ancient Jewish culture, the 3 symbolized completeness, and the 4 was like an exceeding, an excessive, an amount over the limit. That's basically it, and that's why, as I explained, the idiom means the tolerable limit of transgressions has been reached, and now judgment is unavoidable. So God is using, in other words, Paul Simon and this 4 symbolism, this number 4 associated with Simon, to point to this, to point to how America has exceeded its tolerable limit of transgressions, and now judgment and destruction of the nation, America, is unavoidable. And again, Paul Simon symbolizes America. He has a very big, famous hit named America, but he is the American baby boomer singer, if you will, the folk singer that God is using through his music, etc. And so anyway, we have for 3 transgressions and for 4, which is why the number 4 is associated with Paul Simon. Okay, but it's Genesis 7:11 that describes the beginning of the flood judgment. That's why Paul Simon is predicted to die 7 months and 11 days, as in Genesis 7:11, after the rainstorms, which is flood symbolism, in the first hours, the beginning of 2025, in which the 4 iconic buildings were struck. The Washington Monument, the Capitol Building, the Empire State Building, and the One World Tower. Now, like I said, that is a parallel with 9/11. Now, 7 months and 11 days is also 223 days, and 223 is the 44 plus 4th prime number. God repeats number 3 times for emphasis of its symbolic meaning, for his signs and connections. On this same night as the lightning, the first day of the year, a Muslim terrorist, and again, the lightning paralleled the terrorism on 9/11. So on this same night as the lightning that paralleled the terrorism in 9/11, a Muslim terrorist drove his Ford, as in hinting at the number 4, Lightning truck. That's the name of the model of the Ford truck. It's a Lightning truck, and this was the day of the 4 lightning strikes. In other words, Ford Lightning, as in 4 lightning strikes. He drove his Ford Lightning truck into a crowd of people in New Orleans. This was on a Wednesday morning at 3 a.m. It occurred just after 3 a.m. And Simon and Garfunkel's first album was named Wednesday Morning, 3 a.m. That's why it all relates to Paul Simon. Wednesday is the fourth day of the week. The attack killed 7 plus 7 people, and another act of terrorism at Trump Tower on the same day involved a Tesla, and Nikola Tesla was known for his lightning strikes, and electricity is symbolic of lightning. A Tesla truck that exploded at the Trump Tower and injured 7 people. That's a 3 sets of 7, because 7 plus 7 were killed in the Ford Lightning truck terrorism, and in the Tesla terrorism at Trump Tower, as in trumpets that were blown in the 3 sets of 7, 7 people were injured. Like the Israelites marched around the walls of Jericho once per day for 7 days, and on the 7th day they marched around 7 times while blowing 7 trumpets. So the 7 people injured at the Trump Tower. Now, exactly 7 months after the 7 plus 7 killed and the 7 injured, after this was the news of the sale of the mansion owned by the producer of the longest running TV drama series, Seventh Heaven. And the mansion sold for $110 million, as in 3 sets of 7 after Joshua led them and he died at 110. And 11 days after this is the predicted date that Paul Simon will die. That gets us a 7 and 11, because again, it's 7 months from the 7 plus 7 deaths and 7 injured to the 110 mansion, and then it's 11 days after that to the predicted death of Paul Simon. So it's 7 months and then 11 days, broken down. But Paul Simon will die also 7 months and 11 days without a breakdown after the rainstorms, which was Genesis 7:11 symbolism that caused the lightning. Okay? New Orleans is relevant in the lyrics of the song Graceland because it can be assumed that Simon is traveling from New Orleans to the Graceland mansion in Memphis, because that's what the song is about. It's about how he is traveling to Graceland and how he's on the highway. And we can assume that he came from the south in New Orleans because he's talking about driving through the Mississippi Delta. And that's just the logical starting point if you're on your way to Memphis and you're not flying into Memphis but driving there. And, you know, New Orleans is known for music, so Paul Simon probably had another reason for being in New Orleans as well. I mean, if you're going to be in that area of the country and you're Paul Simon, you're going to also visit New Orleans as well as Memphis. And it could very well be that Memphis was a side trip. You know, I'm just guessing. But I know that Paul Simon in his music appreciates the southern styles of music in the Deep South. He incorporates that into his music. At least he did in his later music, or in the 80s. And so that's, you know, another reason why it would be likely that he would have been in New Orleans. But also, more to it prophetically, New Orleans is in the state of Louisiana, which is the 6 plus 6 plus 6th state. And the number of the Antichrist in the Bible is 666. And the Graceland mansion is the king of rock and roll's mansion in Memphis. Memphis is named after Memphis, Egypt. And the mansion is symbolic of a king's palace. And in the Bible, the king of Egypt, who persecuted the Jews, is symbolic of the Antichrist, a type for the Antichrist. Believe me, I know far better than you how the prediction made in this video was derived. And more importantly, I know far better than you why the righteous Christian God of the Bible has given me a voice through this prediction. If you are a quote-unquote Christian or Muslim, this prediction was not learned through a demon. Be warned that blaspheming the Holy Spirit is the unforgivable sin. If you are a New Ager or New Spirituality person, this prediction was not learned through somehow tapping into the supposed universal collective consciousness. If you are a conspiracy theorist, this prediction was not learned through figuring out a supposed code that the Illuminati and Satanists are using. This prediction was learned through the Bible and through watching carefully the Lord's prophetic signs, which Jesus commanded all Christians to do. Besides proving that Jesus Christ is the Lord, the reason why God has given me a voice through this prediction is to prove that the controversial things that I am saying in the videos on this channel are the truth. Therefore, a wise person will want to watch all of the videos on this channel. What I will also do is create a video or two that summarizes some of the controversial things that the Lord will prove to be true when the prediction being made in this video comes to pass. I will leave links to these must-watch videos in the description box below this video. Again, the purpose of this prediction, that is from God, is to prove these things that I will talk about. And therefore, it would be foolish to not watch the videos that I will leave links for in the description box below this video. Aliens and UFOs are demons masquerading as aliens and UFOs. Most people's spiritual experiences are demonic deception, especially if they are not a true follower of Christ. In the last days, many people who claim to be a follower of Christ will have spiritual experiences that are in reality demonic. God became a man and died a horrible death at the hand of the ruler of this world, Satan, and then defeated death for you, so that you too can overcome death, which is the price that must be paid for sin. It is time to repent, which means to change one's ways and turn to God and become a disciple of Jesus. Do not listen to or follow the example of most quote-unquote Christians. Instead, follow the teachings of Jesus, which most quote-unquote Christians ignore. Like Jesus, you must surrender your life. Put nothing ahead of Jesus, your Lord. Like Jesus, you must lay down your life so that you may live. As Jesus said, one must die first, like a kernel of wheat going into the ground, in order to then grow and produce fruit. And like Jesus said, one must produce fruit, or else like a branch or a tree not producing fruit, they will be thrown into the fire. Jesus was speaking to quote-unquote Christians when he said this. One must die the self in order to be born again. And like Jesus said, one must be born again to enter the kingdom. Like Jesus, you must sacrifice your life for the sake of the coming kingdom. It means to do work that involves some form of sacrifice and risk. To have faith does not mean to intellectually agree. You need to demonstrate your faith through taking action. To have faith means to trust in God's promises. Taking action demonstrates trust and fear of the Lord. The primary reason that the wrath of God is coming upon America is quote-unquote Christians that do not get what I have just explained. The only reason a Christian is alive is in order to help other people become Christians and make it to the kingdom. Do not be deceived by those on the political left claiming to be quote-unquote Christians. There is no such thing as a Christian on today's political progressive left. Jesus said, "Do not think I have come to abolish or change any bit of the law or the prophets of the Old Testament Bible." In other words, the God of the Old Testament Bible is the exact same God of the New Testament Bible. It is essential that you learn about the God of the Bible and his ways. The God of the Old Testament Bible is looking to see who will fear him, and to fear God is not the same thing as quote-unquote revering or honoring God. Through Christ's ransom payment, a Christian is someone who has been redeemed and freed from slavery to sin and Satan. In response, a true Christian recognizes that their life in this world does not belong to them, and they become a willing slave to Jesus for the sake of the kingdom. Please leave a like and upvote the video, and once this prediction has come to pass, share this video with everyone you know, and more. Don't stop sharing it everywhere in social media. And don't only put the link to this video or another video on this channel in comments sections of places you typically visit, But importantly, put the link to the video in places you never visit, where people who don't think like you visit. If you are a quote-unquote Christian, nothing in terms of an evangelism tool compares to this video with its prediction. It is a massive bag of gold. Beware of Jesus' warning through the quote-unquote Christian that did nothing with his bag of gold and was banished to hell. Also, read Ezekiel chapter 3 and 33 for this same warning. If you think you might be spending too much time watching videos instead of working and sacrificing for the kingdom through handing out flyers and potentially helping hundreds of people in the same length of time as a video, my flyer is filled with amazing information that people need to know right now, and it points people to the video channel. Now is not the time to be handing out typical evangelical tracts that are largely based in error anyway, such as, quote, Jesus loves you, unquote, for example. You can hand out the flyer on busy street corners, put them on car windshields in busy parking lots, and put them in mailboxes. Just send the file to your local print shop. You can download the file from the website. Please leave a like and upvote the video, and once this prediction has come to pass, share this video with everyone you know, and more, don't stop sharing it everywhere in social media. It is essential that everyone immediately read the homepage of my website, asteroidprediction.com. If you are watching this on the YouTube platform, please note that not all of the videos are on YouTube. You need to switch to the Odyssey.com or Rumble.com channel, and do it now in case you aren't able to later.